crazy, crazy. It is already March. It feels like this year is already going super fast, but so far, reading wise, it has been an absolute blast. So let's do a reading wrap up of the books that I read in February. I do want to apologize in advance because I did not write a script for this. I'm just going in raw. And before I get started, I just want to say that February was an absolutely epic month for me. It was the reading month that I have been waiting to have again for a long time. I have been creating book content for almost a year now. I have had amazing engagement. I have been backed by a wonderful community. But with that, I put a certain pressure on myself as a creator to finish books in a certain time or to read specific books that were trending in the book space, even if I didn't find them interesting. I also found that I couldn't focus on the book that I was reading at the present time. I would be thinking about the kind of content that was going to come from the read, what I was going to read next, when I would be completing that book so that I can get to the next book. Last month, February, I sort of focused on retraining my brain, bringing myself back to the present, and allowing myself to engage in the activity of reading. And I think that that is a huge reason why I had such an amazing month. I only DNF'd one book, but I think that's also because the books that I picked for February were books that I was truly interested in, books that resonated with me. Anyway, that's enough rambling. Let's get into February reading wrap up. So I started the month off with Aurora Rising. This is my Fable Book Club book. For those of you that don't know me, sci fi is my first love. It's the subgenre of fantasy that I gravitate to most. This is a book that was picked by my sister from a book lovers tradition that we have every year. If you want to know more about that, I actually have a playlist on my TikTok where you can see how we execute this tradition. This is a YA sci-fi. It's the first book to a series. We have multiple POVs in this book, which feels like we technically have a few main characters, but in my opinion, it feels like in this book we really only have two. Tyler is trying to complete a challenge that will allow him to have first draft pick of his crewmates where he will be the captain. However, he fails that challenge when he chooses instead to save Aurora's life. This results in him being left with sort of the bottom of the barrel motley crew of misfits. As the story continues, we find out that Aurora is from a different time altogether. Like I said, this story is multiple POV, so you do get a piece of everyone's story from their perspective. So you do get a bit of Aurora's backstory and what life was like before she woke up on Tyler's ship. Anyway, from there, the story takes its turns. A lot of secrets are uncovered. There's deception, betrayal, loss, a heartbreaking loss at the end of this book. This was an absolutely fun read. This is a YA sci-fi done right. I definitely expect that I'll finish the rest of the series. Next, we have The Dividing Sky by Jill Tew. I'm grinning from ear to ear because this was a 5-star read for me. So our main character, Liv Newman, is an emo proxy for an elite upperclassman named Arthur Preston. Our world is called the Metro, and in this time, capitalism is at its worst. Everything has become about production, produce, 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 so much so people can't step away from their work long enough to have a life. And in this dystopian sci fi, the wealthy aren't given the luxury of leisure like we see in other books like this. They work and produce just as much as everyone else. And in my opinion, they have it worst off because they really can't step away. Not even long enough to meet with their loved ones. So they have a proxy for everything. Liv Newman's job is to create emotional memories that she then sells to Mr. Preston. And he tasks her with creating organic, natural memories, which she translates as these over the top, cliff-hanging memories that he never buys. Our main character depends on being able to sell these memories, and because she isn't able to create the kind of memories that Mr. Preston is looking for, she subjects to selling them illegally. The subplot here is that there is a drug that is given to people of all classes that gives them a sort of mind numbing high and an escape from what their world is day to day. However, clients that take Liv's memories don't have a need for this drug that is circulating through the metro. And that's a bit of a problem for those who are trying to gain control through using this drug. And that's where Adrian comes in because it becomes his job to find out who is dealing this better drug. And I won't give too much because I don't want to spoil the plot, but what I will say is that memory loss happens, and this puts a bit of a wrench in Adrian's plan. I was absolutely distraught to find out that this is a standalone. I did not want this story to end, but it is cohesive, it is complete, and it is a ride, let me tell you. Every book that I read in the month of February was either a 4 or 5-star read, and when that happens, I consider myself a very lucky lady, and House of Frank was a huge contributor. This book gives Howl's Moving Castle. There's whimsy, the fantasy takes you away. The book is essentially about loss and grief. Our main character, Saika, loses her sister, and her sister's last wish is that Saika or Sai plant her ashes at a location called Ash Gardens. Frank is a wolf that owns the house that's on the land, The house is where Frank lives with his employees that help him tend to the needs of Ash Gardens. Saika arrives to Ash Gardens unexpected in the middle of a storm, so Frank offers to house her. Very quickly, Frank and the employees realize that Saika is not yet ready to plant her sister, and they offer her a job so that she can stay at Ash Gardens until she is ready. Saika obviously says yes, and then this book takes you through the process of loss and trying to have a life after loss. This book was very heartwarming, very well written. Kay Sinclair did an amazing job. Paranesi by Susanna Clark, and this is where I fear that the words will fail me. This is a very short read with a very large impact. If this wasn't listed as a prep read for Calabasas by R.F. Kuang, I don't know that I would have picked this up. So thank you to R.F. Kuang for leading me to Paranesi. This book is not at all what I thought it was going to be, and the cover is a bit deceiving. Our main character, Paranesi, is a man that lives in a labyrinth of halls and vestibules. He considers himself a man of science, and he spends his days studying the place he calls the house. This labyrinth also traps an ocean with tides that rise and fall, and Paranesi records everything. As far as Paranesi understands, there are only two living people in the world, and it is him and another man that he calls the other. Him and the other meet twice a week to discuss their findings, and Paranesi goes a long time like this, until another living being is brought into their world. Paranesi begins to ask a lot of questions, and the answers that he discovers are gut-wrenching. Paranesi is a very, very lovable character who is just so innocent and so quirky, and when you find out why his name is Paranesi, after reading the book, I looked it up, and that little detail is what brought this book up to 5 stars. I highly recommend after reading this book, and only after reading this book, that readers look up Giovanni Battista Paranesi. I can't follow that up with anything else. I'm not listing these books in the order that I read them, but here is where I'll mention The Macabre by Kosoko Jackson. This book is supposed to be a dark fantasy or a grim fantasy. I believe that when readers say grim fantasy, there is a different understanding. This is somewhat a thriller and a fantasy. This is a thriller in a magical setting. I got it as an arc on NetGalley, as my first arc on NetGalley, and this book started my NetGalley experience with a bang. This book opens with our main character, Lewis, after having just lost his mother. That's not a spoiler, that's a synopsis. While in the hospital, he believes that he's engaged in small talk with a stranger, but very quickly he realizes that is not the case. Without giving you more than that, it becomes Lewis's mission to neutralize a dark spirit that is creating victims through a series of paintings. We do have a subplot romance with so much yearning and so much build. I really enjoyed the romance in this book. It is perfection. It is absolute perfection. But it's not about that. It's not about that. Anyway, this book is urban. It takes place in our present London, Korea, Russia, and France, I believe. And America, I think. I can't remember. I don't know. There's a magical house that transports him to all these different places. You have to read it. It comes out in September. When you read it, you'll understand. There is a found family trope that we sort of kind of stumble into. Like, you don't really see it coming until it's already happened. This was another book that made me sad that it was a standalone because it was done so well. I gave this book a 4.25, but having sat on that for a little while, I feel like it should be rated higher. I don't know if it's quite 5 stars, but very close. Very, very close. Chain Gang All Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah is a book that I actually read earlier in the month. This book is a speculative fiction about the American prison system. I don't know if that was mentioned somewhere on Book Talk before I got to it, but I didn't know that. I just know that it got a lot of hype and a lot of praise. Some of my favorite creators in the book space read the book and gave it a very high rating. So when I saw that it was available at my library, I just kind of got it on a whim. And I am so glad that I did. Can I just say, hear me out. I don't think this book is for us. And I mean for us. The fiction that is put in the book, I think, is obviously for everyone, but there are real facts that are in this book as well. None of it is information that our community isn't already aware of. I think if you grow up as a Black person in America, this is sort of information that circulates and we all know. I feel like the community that this book can best serve are other communities. The way that this author incorporated both the fiction and the facts of the American prison system, that takes real skill with a heavy hand and a gentle touch. And that is what Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah did with Chain Gang All Stars. The main plot of the story is about a group of prisoners who have decided to take part in these hard action sports, which are these gladiator-esque type games where prisoners fight to the death. Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah pulled no punches with this. He showed impact from those not just in the prison system, but also out, from those who are for it and from those who are against it. If I'm being honest, this plot is almost scary because you can almost see this happening in our world. But as the work of art that it is, it was amazing. And my last, but definitely not least read of February, The Dark Mirror by Samantha Shannon. If you're new here, I am absolutely obsessed with this series. This is book 5 in the Bone season. It released last month, February 25th. I was up bright and early to get my copy, and I immediately went to a cafe nearby to crack it open and get right into it. The Bone season is a fantasy series set in London in the future, not too far in the future, year 2059, but now year 2060. Here we have an underground syndicate of clairvoyants who have been keeping themselves hidden from Scion London. It is a crime to be a clairvoyant. So these clairvoyants have created their own system to navigate, to live, and survive. The story of Paige Mahoney and Arcturus Mazartham, aka the Warden, is continued in book 5, and it was an absolutely amazing continuation. I cannot wait for book 6. So yeah, those are my reads. I'm really sorry if this video did not go far enough in depth. Again, I didn't write a script. I sort of just went in raw. However, I really hope that all of you guys had an amazing February. And if not, March is here, so it's another opportunity to do it right. Remember to read what you want to read. Remember that reading is supposed to be fun. If you are a content creator in the book space like me, then remember that reading is not about content creating, and that content creating is about reading. And that means that it starts with first enjoying the activity of reading. I forgot that. Don't let yourself forget that. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.